Mark Zuckerberg had to walk into a Los Angeles courtroom today and do something he's never had to do before. He had to testify in front of a jury, not in front of senators who are performing for the camera, not in front of some sort of press tour where his comms team runs the show, but just in front of regular people, in which he had to defend the safety of his products. And that trial could determine the future of social media for all time. It could cost his companies billions of dollars and could really redefine how we categorize attention and the fight for it at the commercial level. I spent today on, CNN, CBS, MS Now, and the BBC talking about this. But there are some things I couldn't get into these 5-minute television hits, so I want to share them with you here. So this case, as you probably know, is called KGM versus Meta Platforms. And it centers on a girl named Kaylee. Girl is the wrong word. She's a woman now. She's 20 years old. But she was a girl when she began using social media. She got her first YouTube account at age 6, her first Instagram account at age 9. And she went on in her life to have a wide range of troubles, all sorts of body dysmorphia, depression, even suicidal thoughts. And she was bullied and sextorted on the platform. And her lawyers say she was, on Instagram sometimes more than 16 hours a day. She was in the courtroom today, as was Zuckerberg. And Meta's position, of course, here is that it's not our fault. Kids are going to lie about their age, even though we tell them they can't be on our platform unless they're 13 years old. Mental health is complicated. We tried, right? They have said in all sorts of releases before the testimony even took place that these trials are going to cherry pick their documents and that they've poured money and resources into being the safest platform out there. And today, Zuckerberg sat in the witness box and he made that argument in person, right? And he was very disciplined. This is the thing about someone in his position. He is deeply, deeply media trained, and the messaging is rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And at points, he got pretty testy. He told the plaintiff's attorney at one point, that's not what I'm saying at all. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. He got pretty irritated with the line of questioning, but he stayed on message. And the message was, we care about safety. We're not trying to maximize time on the app, right? We're building a sustainable community. And that is a very carefully constructed argument. I want you to kind of hang on to it because I'm going to come back to it. So the big push in this trial from the plaintiffs is the mountain of evidence that they have when the discovery documents came in. They provided just a mountain of evidence when it came to how people inside Meta, as well as inside other companies who will be part of this as well, talked about children, in which they referred to tweens as, an opportunity, that they needed to get tweens in order to get teens. That at one point, Nick Clegg, the head of policy, wrote an email basically saying our age enforcement law rules are unenforceable and that's unacceptable. You have reports from inside Instagram that kids are using the very systems that they have built to bully each other and do terrible things. So all of that evidence suddenly was put up against these talking points that Zuckerberg came prepared with. And the plaintiff's attorney is a guy named Mark Lanier, and he's known for like big sort of showy spectacles. He started the trial by talking about the ABCs. He had blocks that said ABC, and he was saying addicting the brains of children. He's just trying to get things to stick in the jury's mind. And one of the spectacles he arranged today was he had 5 lawyers unspool this like 20-foot long collage, like a physical collage of hundreds of photos that Kaylee had posted to Instagram. And he asked Zuckerberg to basically sit there with it, to look at it and sit there with it. Now, the media in the room could not see the photos, but the jury could. And that was the spectacle of trying to say, right, this is the richest man in the courtroom, right, 5th richest man in the world, being forced to look at what his product did to a specific child's life, the influence he had in a specific child's life, with her sitting in the room in front of this jury. That's a big deal, and so that's big. So so there's all these documents again that were presented, and thinking about Zuckerberg trying to present himself as well as he could. One document that Lanier introduced was an internal meta-communications plan, a document from inside the company that coached Zuckerberg on how to present himself publicly. It said he should be authentic and direct, human, insightful, and real. I mean, they literally are like the commands you'd put into an LLM. And he should avoid being fake and robotic and corporate and cheesy. And Zuckerberg said that he is, quote, well known to be bad at media appearances. And I just think it's really interesting, right? Just like there's so much, I just think we forget how much engineering goes into how these companies and their leaderships are perceived. So that on top of this mountain of evidence that documented all of these internal conversations that showed just how aware the company seems to have been that there was a real problem is a really big deal. Because again, this case is being called the big tobacco case. And I'll talk more about this in a second, but it has to do with the idea, did this company know that it was causing harm and do it anyway, right? That's the legal theory being tested here. So we were talking for a moment ago about that idea of a community that is sustainable, right? Let's come back to that. So Zuckerberg said, quote, I'm not trying to maximize the amount of time people spend every month. And he said he's focused on, quote, building a community that is sustainable. And the plaintiff's lawyers, Lanier, introduced a 2015 email thread in which Zuckerberg appeared to flag improving engagement metrics as an urgent company priority, right? And when asked about it today, he said that the word goals in the email was an aspirational word and that the email could be misread. But the phrase company goal is actually in the email. And he kept saying, it would be bad for us as a company if we made a bad experience for our users. And Lanier kept coming back to this idea that, that Kaylee would at times spend 16 hours a day on Instagram. And Zuckerberg was essentially arguing, well, we wouldn't engineer it to be that way because if it's bad for a user, then that user is going to stop using the platform. Which is such a interesting argument, I was not in the courtroom, but as I understand it, Lanier didn't, I think, fall for that or engage with it directly. But what I would have wanted to say to that is, you can absolutely build something that someone does and does and does and does until it, until they just kind of burn out. Sure, but keeping someone connected is the essence of all sorts of self-destructive vices, gambling, cigarettes, right? All of that stuff. You only need it to be as barely good as possible to keep somebody coming back. And so, I think about interviews I've done with folks who, I did a big piece of reporting on these social media, they were called social casino games. And Facebook was one of the main ways that these folks found the most addictable people for the gambling companies that were creating these sort of casino simulators. And there is public talks from Facebook executives who are talking to this industry and essentially saying, you can decide who you want to find. You can go with the whales, right? People who are going to be really addicted to gambling and throw a huge amount of money at it. Or if you want just casual gamblers. And they literally talk at one point about the idea of this kind of like flywheel, effect where you can sort of get somebody into a habitual cycle. And they talk about, how some people will, I can't remember what it is. It's like, they said something like self-destruct financially, and you can decide whether you want to lead them down that path or not. So, the idea that something bad for you would naturally be rejected by the user flies in the face of a lot of American history, in my view. So I thought that was sort of silly. So I want to play you a little footage from a moment that didn't get a huge amount of attention today, but I think is incredibly emblematic of what was going on with, what goes on sort of with this company and the kinds of decisions that leaders make at companies. So during the approach to the courtroom, you had this footage, this is from the Associated Press, of Zuckerberg arriving, okay? Here are the two people in his entourage. I don't know if these folks are security or what their story is, but they're each wearing the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, okay? The ones that have the cameras inside them. And if you know anything about courtrooms, and in this case, if you knew anything in advance, you would know that Judge Carolyn Kuhl, who runs the courtroom, forbade cameras. You're not allowed to have a camera inside the courtroom. And yet these folks went in there anyway. And so what's amazing is the judge had to basically say to his entourage, if anyone has been recording any of this on your cameras, you need to dispose of that immediately, or I'm going to hold you in contempt. I'm going to have you arrested, right? I mean, this is so the idea that I don't know who, like what kind of meeting was it where somebody said, it would be a good idea. We should wear our surveillance glasses into the courtroom to, I don't know what, normalize this, or like, I don't know. I mean, Zuckerberg knew enough not to wear them, but his entourage did it anyway. I don't know. It just felt like it's like somebody thought it would be a good marketing moment, and it was not, it seems to me. And I was blown away that somebody made that decision. It was incredible to me. So, the thing that, there was, of course, a lot of parents in the courtroom. Parents who say their children died because of social media, people who had traveled in from all over the country. When Adam Mosseri, the CEO of Instagram, testified last week, there were parents who stayed up overnight in the rain, camped out, drinking coffee all night in the rain to be able to secure their space in the courtroom so that they could be behind him and in the courtroom. And so, these are folks who watched Zuckerberg apologize to them in Congress 2 years ago, right? He went through the performative motions of standing up and looking at them and saying, I'm sorry for everything you've been through. Today he was under oath, and he said that Meta does not seek to make Instagram addictive. He says that his company navigates youth safety in a reasonable way. He also said, and I thought this was really interesting, that when he was pressed, for instance, on research that had come out of the University of Chicago, in which 18 experts had concluded that a beauty filter on Instagram can cause real psychological damage to young women. And he was asked, did you know about this? And in view of that, why did you strike down the ban that you guys had on the kinds of filters that allow you to see what you would look like with plastic surgery? And he said that he didn't specifically remember, but he said it feels like something I would. Basically, the attorney said, "Is this you called it paternalistic?" And it was very interesting. Zuckerberg said, that is something I would have said and something I would feel. I feel that way. And this is interesting because this is a real turn from the guy who once upon a time stood up and apologized to parents. And now, when asked about that study, the University of Chicago study, he said, yeah, I was aware of that, but it came down to a question of free expression. And that is the sort of libertarian DNA coming through in a way that it didn't used to. It used to be that this was a guy who really tried publicly to sort of, take responsibility for what was going wrong on the platform. And now it's a much different guy who was on the stand today, which I thought was really interesting. We saw a very different category of person. And the thing is, although I'm sure that in the circles he moves and in the political circles he is now moving, that stuff plays really well. I just don't know how it's going to play with a jury. I think that's a really interesting question. And again, we're going to keep covering this trial, right? This is a trial that is a bellwether. It's going to set the stakes for 1,600 other cases that are going to happen. And so it's enormously momentous. So I'll be covering it all week. And I'm going to, if you want the version that I can't tell in 3 minutes on TV, the version that has the context and the history and the stakes in it, this is where I'm going to be telling it. And I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't. Also, if you are interested, on Friday, the 20th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be having a conversation live on Substack with Taylor Lorenz. She and I feel very differently about the scientific consensus on the dangers to young people of social media and of smartphones. And so we're going to debate that in public, which I'm excited about. So we'll be talking about that and this trial and a lot more there. I hope to see you there. Thanks. The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it And like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.